So there I was, Maya Rodriguez, the only human at the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy, sitting in what I can only describe as a lecture hall designed by someone who clearly never met a right angle they liked. The Galactic Defense Academy on Kepler 442b was all flowing curves and impossible architecture that made my human brain hurt just looking at it. But hey, at least the chairs were comfortable. Well, if you happen to have 4 legs and a chitinous exoskeleton. Commander Vextar clicked into the room on his 6 spindly legs, his compound eyes scanning the assembled cadets with what I assumed was disapproval. Hard to tell with insectoids, really. Everything looks like disapproval when you have mandibles the size of dinner plates. "Welcome, cadets, to advanced xenobiology and combat tactics," he announced, in that weird clicking voice that sounded like someone was typing very aggressively on an ancient keyboard. "Today, we begin our study of the galaxy's most fascinating species." I perked up. Finally, maybe we'd get to something interesting. "We start with humans," Vextar continued, and I swear I heard a few snickers from my classmates. "These remarkable little creatures have somehow convinced the Galactic Council that they belong among civilized species. Oh, wonderful, here we go again. As you can see," he gestured toward me with one of his chitinous appendages, "they are small, soft, and completely lacking in natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venom sacs, no ability to photosynthesize. They cannot even regenerate lost limbs. Truly, they are nature's most adorable mistake." I raised my hand. "Actually, Commander, I prefer to think of us as efficiently designed." The snickers got louder. Clix, one of the Zephyrian twins, whispered something to his brother Clax in their musical language that definitely wasn't complimentary. Their silvery skin shimmered with amusement, and their forearms gestured dismissively in my direction. "Ah, yes," Vextar clicked approvingly, "they are also remarkably optimistic. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, humans maintain an almost delusional sense of self-worth, fascinating from a psychological perspective." I slouched back in my chair, which creaked ominously under even my negligible human weight. You know what the really funny part was? Every single one of these superior beings had somehow managed to avoid sitting anywhere near my desk. Pure coincidence, I'm sure. It definitely had nothing to do with the fact that the space under my workstation was just a little too dark, and occasionally things moved down there that shouldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. But hey, what did I know? I was just an adorable mistake with delusions of grandeur. Professor Quinthak, a crystalline being who looked like someone had taught geometry to become pretentious, materialized at the front of the class. Literally materialized. Show off? "Tomorrow," he announced in a voice like wind chimes having an argument, "we will conduct practical evaluations. Each species will demonstrate their natural combat capabilities." Oh, this was going to be fun. The next morning arrived with all the enthusiasm of a tax audit. I shuffled into the combat arena, which looked like someone had crossed a gladiatorial amphitheater with a medical laboratory. Very reassuring. Nothing says friendly educational exercise like titanium-reinforced walls and what appeared to be blast shields. Professor Quinthak floated at the center of the arena, his crystalline form refracting the harsh lights into nauseating rainbow patterns. "Today, we observe the natural defensive capabilities of each species," he announced, with the kind of academic smugness that made you want to throw things at him, if throwing things wouldn't immediately result in your expulsion. "We shall begin with our human specimen." Specimen, lovely. I stepped forward, acutely aware of every eye, compound eye, photoreceptor, and sensory tentacle focused on me. The arena suddenly felt about as comfortable as a dentist's chair made of broken glass. "Now then," Quintock continued, "we require volunteers to provide a gentle but realistic threat assessment." 3 hands shot up immediately. Well, Clix raised 4 arms, Clax raised his other 4, and Regent Buzz lifted 1 massive thoracian claw, while his other 5 limbs flexed menacingly. Because of course they did. "Excellent," the professor chimed. "A controlled scenario. Please remember, cadets, humans are fragile. We don't want to actually harm our little friend." I held up a hand. Professors, maybe we should reconsider this particular—" "Nonsense," Quintock sparkled dismissively. "This is purely educational. What could possibly go wrong?" Famous last words in any language, I thought, as something under my desk back in the classroom stirred restlessly. Even from here I could feel it getting agitated. This was not good. Clicks and clacks approached from opposite sides, their movements fluid and predatory. Zephrins were basically what happened when evolution decided that jellyfish needed to be faster, stronger, and significantly more smug. Their silvery skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns that I was pretty sure translated to, "This is going to be embarrassing for you." Regent Buzz scuttled forward on 6 legs, his thoracian exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. His noble house apparently specialized in combat breeding, which meant he was essentially a walking tank with an attitude problem and a trust fund. "Don't worry, little human," Buzz clicked condescendingly, his mandibles spreading in what might have been a smile if you were feeling generous. "We'll be very gentle. Wouldn't want to damage something so precious and helpless." I sighed and settled into a defensive stance, though honestly, what was I defending against? Clicks could probably bench press a small spacecraft. Clicks could generate electrical fields that would make a Tesla coil jealous. And Buzz had natural armor that could deflect plasma rounds. Meanwhile, I had opposable thumbs and a really bad feeling about this. "Maybe," I tried one more time, "we should think about what happens when you corner something that doesn't want to be cornered." They laughed. All of them. Even Professor Quintak's crystalline form tinkled with amusement. Back in the classroom, something growled. Very softly, very unhappily. "Begin," Professor Quintak announced, and immediately I was reminded why humans developed the whole fight-or-flight response. Unfortunately, my options were flight to where exactly, and fight 3 walking weapons with my squishy human hands. Clicks came at me first, moving with that fluid grace that made Zephyrians excellent dancers and terrible enemies. His forearms spread wide in a classic grappling formation. I ducked under his reach and rolled to the side, which earned me a few surprised murmurs from the audience. "Oh look," I called out, slightly out of breath. "The human can move. Alert the scientific journals." Clacks tried to flank me, electricity already crackling between his fingertips. I dove behind one of the arena's defensive barriers, just as a bolt of bioelectric energy scorched the ground where I'd been standing. "Careful there, Sparky," I shouted over the barrier. "Wouldn't want to accidentally cook the specimen before the lesson's over." The growing crowd of spectators was eating this up. I could see faculty members floating, skittering, and oozing into the viewing areas. Commander Vexstar had even brought what I assumed was popcorn, though it looked more like tiny crystallized insects. Regent Buzz decided subtlety was overrated and charged straight at my barrier with enough force to crack the reinforced metal. His family motto was probably, "Why think when you can bulldoze?" I vaulted over the barrier just before he demolished it, landing in a crouch that would have made my old gymnastics coach proud. "You know," I panted, "for a noble, you're not very strategic." "Stand still, little human," Buzz roared, mandibles clicking furiously. "This would be much easier if you would simply accept your place in the natural order." "Where's the fun in that?" I replied, dodging another electrical blast from Clacks. The smell of ozone was getting pretty intense, and I was running out of places to hide. That's when I felt it, the familiar tingle at the back of my mind that meant someone very large, very protective, and very not from this dimension was getting seriously annoyed. The temperature in the arena dropped about 10 degrees, and shadows started behaving in ways that would make a physicist cry. Everyone?" I called out, still dodging attacks but with noticeably more urgency in my voice. "I really think we should stop this now." "Nonsense!" Professor Quintak sparkled with academic enthusiasm. "This is fascinating. The human's endurance is remarkable for such a primitive—" A tentacle the size of a subway car punched through the arena floor like it was made of tissue paper. The arena went dead silent, except for the sound of rubble settling and what might have been Professor Quintak's crystalline equivalent of choking. "Maya," came a voice from the hole in the floor. A voice that sounded like a thunderstorm having a conversation with a foghorn. "Are the mean ones bothering you again?" I sighed and walked over to the edge of the hole, where a massive eye the size of a dinner plate was blinking up at me with concern. "Hi, Mochi. I thought I told you to stay under the desk." "You were taking too long to come back." the voice rumbled, with the kind of petulant tone that suggested I was dealing with approximately 50 tons of interdimensional entity with the emotional maturity of a golden retriever. And they smell scared. Did they try to hurt you? Around the arena, aliens were making the kind of sounds you'd expect from beings who'd just realized they'd been picking on someone's pet human, while said someone happened to be an eldritch horror from beyond the veil of reality. "Well," I said, looking around at the frozen faces of my classmates, "this is awkward." What emerged from that hole in the arena floor would have given Lovecraft nightmares and probably therapy bills. Mochi flowed upward like liquid shadow mixed with too many limbs, sporting approximately 14 tentacles, 6 eyes arranged in what I'd learned to recognize as his happy-to-see-you configuration, and a mouth that could comfortably swallow a small spaceship. His skin shifted between deep purple and that particular shade of black that made you question the nature of reality. "Everyone," I said, with the resigned tone of someone introducing their embarrassing relative at a dinner party, "meet Mochi. Mochi, these are my classmates who are just leaving." Nobody moved. They couldn't. I'm pretty sure most of them had forgotten how their legs worked. Mochi's massive head swiveled toward the 3 aliens who'd been attacking me, and his eyes narrowed to slits. "These ones made you run around," he observed with a kind of disapproval that could cause tectonic shifts. "That was not nice." "Now, Mochi," I said quickly, "they were just following instructions. Nobody actually wanted to hurt me." "They made you smell like stress sweat," Mochi countered with irrefutable logic. "And that one with the sparky hands tried to electrocute you." Clacks made a sound like a deflating balloon. "Okay, yes, but that's just how they express themselves culturally," I explained. Which wasn't even remotely true, but seemed like the diplomatic thing to say when your emotional support cosmic horror was considering whether to rearrange the local space-time continuum. Commander Vexstar finally found his voice, though it came out about 3 octaves higher than usual. What exactly is that thing?" "The thing," I said, scratching behind what might have been Mochi's ear if geometry worked normally in his vicinity, "is my pet. Well, technically, he's my emotional support multidimensional entity, but the paperwork was a nightmare." Mochi preened at the attention, which involved several tentacles doing things that hurt to look at directly. "I am a very good boy," he announced to the arena at large, and I swear his voice made the reinforced walls vibrate in harmonious frequencies. "Yes, you are," I agreed, "because you always reinforce positive behavior. But maybe we should explain to everyone how this works before Professor Quinthax shatters completely." The crystalline professor was indeed making concerning tinkling sounds, like wind chimes having an existential crisis. "See, the thing about humans," I began, settling comfortably against one of Mochi's smaller tentacles, "is that we have this weird evolutionary quirk. We look at things that could easily kill us, and our first thought isn't run away or defend territory or even call for backup. Our first thought is usually, I wonder if it would like belly rub." Regent Buzz's mandibles were opening and closing soundlessly, like a fish trying to remember how to breathe water. Thousands of years ago, humans looked at wolves, apex predators with teeth designed for tearing flesh, and thought, those would make excellent friends. And we were right. We did the same thing with horses, which are basically 1,000-pound anxiety attacks with hooves. We domesticated cats, even though they're tiny murder machines that clearly think they're gods. Mochi rumbled approvingly and lowered his head so I could reach the spot behind his sensory cluster that made him happy. "So, when we got to space and met all these wonderful new species," I continued, "naturally we started making friends. Void krakens make excellent companions once you teach them not to accidentally phase shift your furniture into parallel dimensions. Quantum parasites are surprisingly affectionate if you feed them properly, and cosmic horrors from beyond the veil of reality?" I gestured to Mochi, who was now purring in frequencies that made the arena's metal supports best emotional support animals in the universe. "But," Professor Quinthax managed to croak out, "the regulations clearly state that humans are a non-threatening species suitable for basic integration protocols." I looked at him with the kind of patience you reserve for children and people who think they understand cosmic bureaucracy. "Whoever wrote those regulations," I said gently, "has clearly never met a human with a pet." That's when Mochi decided to be helpful. One of his tentacles gently scooped up Clicks, who immediately started making the kind of high-pitched sounds that suggested his vocal cords were having a disagreement with reality. Another tentacle collected Clacks, who had apparently forgotten that he could generate electricity when faced with something that existed in more dimensions than his brain could process. "Put me down, put me down, put me down!" Regent Buzz chittered as a third tentacle lifted him like he was a particularly ornate paperweight. "Mochi gentle," I reminded him. "Remember what we practiced about appropriate force levels." "I am being gentle," Mochi protested. And to be fair, he wasn't actually crushing them. He was just holding them at eye level so he could examine them more closely. "This one has pretty colors," he observed, rotating Clicks slowly. "And this one smells like ozone. Are they toys?" "They're classmates," I corrected. "We've talked about the difference." "Oh!" Mochi looked genuinely apologetic. "Sorry, small shining ones. I will put you down now." He deposited all three aliens in a neat row, where they immediately huddled together like the galaxy's most unlikely support group. Commander Vexstar was slowly backing toward the exit, which was adorable considering Mochi could probably catch him by thinking really hard in his direction. "You know what the really funny part is?" I asked the assembled crowd, settling more comfortably against Mochi's bulk. "The Galactic Council knew exactly what they were getting when they invited humans to join. They just didn't bother to read the fine print in their own xenobiology reports." Professor Quinthak's crystalline form had stopped tinkling and was now making sounds like a Geiger counter having doubts about its life choices. "Let me give you the highlights," I continued cheerfully. "Humans are the only species in galactic history to achieve interstellar flight while simultaneously maintaining active diplomatic relations with beings from 17 different dimensional planes. We have trade agreements with sentient gas clouds, mutual defense pacts with hive-minded crystal formations, and cultural exchange programs with entities that exist primarily as mathematical concepts." Mochi beamed with pride, which involved several eyes changing colors and at least 3 tentacles doing things that made the local gravity field hiccup. "My friend Tommy back on Earth has a pet that used to be a minor deity of chaos before it got lonely and decided to follow him home. My cousin Rosa runs a dog-walking service that includes 2 void krakens, a living shadow that may or may not be the physical manifestation of existential dread, and something she just calls Bob because its real name requires vocal cords that exist in 11 dimensions. The arena was dead silent except for the sound of several species having their worldviews fundamentally rearranged. "The reason humans got invited to the Galactic Defense Academy," I explained, "wasn't because we needed protection. It was because everyone else realized that a species capable of forming meaningful emotional bonds with cosmic horrors might be exactly the kind of allies you want when things get weird in deep space." Commander Vexstar had reached the exit but seemed to have forgotten how doors worked. "You see, most species look at something like Mochi and think threat assessment or containment protocols or run away very fast while screaming. Humans look at something like Mochi and think, does it need a hug?" I scratched behind Mochi's sensory cluster again, and he purred in frequencies that made the arena's structural supports sing harmoniously. "And 9 times out of 10, I concluded, the answer is yes. Yes, it absolutely needs a hug." Mochi's eyes all focused on the 3 aliens who'd been attacking me, and his voice took on that particular tone of someone explaining something very important to people who weren't paying attention. "Maya gives very good hugs," he informed them solemnly. "She also makes excellent grilled cheese sandwiches and never forgets to say please and thank you. You should not try to hurt someone who makes grilled cheese sandwiches." Professor Quinthak finally managed to speak, though his voice sounded like someone had taught mathematics to have an anxiety attack. "The implications? The diplomatic ramifications? The complete failure of our intelligence assessments? Oh, don't feel bad," I said kindly. "It's not your fault. Most species assume that dangerous and friendly are mutually exclusive concepts. Humans figured out a long time ago that the most dangerous things make the best friends because they have the most to offer and the most to lose." The silence stretched for what felt like several geological epochs before Regent Buzz cleared his throat with a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. I would like to formally apologize, he announced, his noble bearing somewhat diminished by the fact that he was still trembling. I may have misjudged the nature of human-alien relations. Apology accepted, I said graciously, though you might want to work on your threat assessment skills. Generally speaking, when someone warns you multiple times that you're making a mistake, it's worth listening. Clicks and clacks approached cautiously, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in what I'd learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of nervous laughter. Maya, Clicks ventured, would Mochi mind if we asked him some questions? For academic purposes? Mochi's eyes lit up. Literally, they started glowing a happy shade of amber. You want to know about me? He asked with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered that other people found him interesting. I like questions. Ask me about my favorite things. What are your favorite things? Clax asked politely, though he maintained what he probably considered a safe distance. Maya, Mochi answered immediately, and grilled cheese sandwiches, and that spot behind my sensory cluster, and the way stars look when you fold space around them, and belly rubs. Commander Vexstar had finally figured out how doors worked, but had stopped trying to leave. Instead, he was watching with the fascination of someone whose entire understanding of the universe had just been turned inside out, and shaken vigorously. Perhaps, he clicked thoughtfully, we should revise our curriculum to include a more comprehensive study of human social dynamics. Professor Quinthac's crystalline form was slowly returning to its normal prismatic colors. Indeed, it appears our xenological databases may have been somewhat incomplete. I stood up and gave Mochi's closest tentacle an affectionate pat. Well, this has been educational for everyone. Same time tomorrow? Maya, Mochi rumbled contentedly, can we go get grilled cheese now? Protecting you from the mean ones made me hungry. They weren't actually mean, I corrected gently. They just didn't understand. There's a difference. If you say so, Mochi agreed, because he trusted my judgment about these things. But I still want grilled cheese. As we made our way out of the arena, Mochi flowing along beside me like a nightmare made of liquid shadows and unconditional love, I heard Regent Buzz whisper to the Zephyrian twins, "Do you think all humans have pets like that?" "I really hope not," Clax whispered back. I grinned and called over my shoulder, "Oh, don't worry, Mochi's actually pretty small for his species. You should meet my roommate's pet sometime. Fluffy's about the size of a small moon and has separation anxiety." The sound of several aliens having simultaneous existential crises followed us all the way back to the dormitory, where I had some grilled cheese to make and a very good interdimensional boy to spoil with belly rubs. Just another day at the Galactic Defense Academy, where humans were learning that sometimes the best way to prove you belong among the stars is to bring your friends along for the ride.